All right, my mic is muted. The 5 minute timer seemed like a great idea, but it was way too long. I've been sitting here for 4.5 minutes and it felt like eternity. So I just ended the timer. Next time we do this, we'll do a 30-second timer because I had like 30 or so people waiting in the room and they all ended up leaving. Thanks for joining. Those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, you can enter them in the comment below, either on Milton Talk or my YouTube or my Facebook page. If somebody shared the stream somewhere else, then I won't get the question. So it has to be in one of these three places because those are the three places I'm monitoring. So Milton Talk, my Facebook page, or YouTube. Any one of those, you can type the question. Otherwise, I have a bunch of questions that came in. Some questions that I kind of made up myself, some questions that came in. I'll take the easy ones first, but otherwise keep asking questions. And I had initially started doing this in the beginning of pandemic every week, and weekly got too much and I kind of stopped and it fell off. So I apologize for not doing it as often as I had initially wanted to. If you can hear me, can you please just type a comment and let me know? Because last time I did this, I was just talking to myself for a while, which was not really all that much fun. Really? Anyone? I can see people watching it. Just any progress seeing? Oh, so you know what? Let's just take real questions first, and I'll go through my present questions after. This is a good one. It comes up from time to time. Any progress in CN? CN is, so the status is that the federal government did a panel. They took it up for e-approval. Environmental assessment. They did an environmental assessment, and the federal government ended up giving CN the approval. There was a court case. We had taken CN to court, arguing municipal and provincial jurisdiction over their project. And that court case was in hold pending the federal decision. Now that a federal decision came out, regardless of which direction it came out in, it came out. So now the court case takes over again. The two different court cases, actually. It's, you know how courts work. It's going to take a few years. And we're still pretty optimistic. Our arguments are pretty strong. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I mean, if you're really worried about it, I live in the same area and I have no plans of moving anywhere. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. That's that question. I got some other questions as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the question just on the list, not in any priority. And if there are questions that come up in comments, I'll take those as well. Somebody messaged me, emailed me, or Facebook messaged me actually, this question about firefighters, what Milton is doing to make sure that fire department and funding of fire department, number of firefighters and everything else keeps up with the population growth. One of the things you'll notice is that if you look at the ratio of population to firefighters back in, say, 2000 and look at it today, that ratio has changed a lot, right? So there were more firefighters per people back in 2000 than they are today. Even though the funding for the fire department has gone up faster. Part of that has to do with salaries and benefits and everything else. Firefighters are very expensive and the salaries have gone up way faster than inflation and tax increases and everything else. So that plays a role into it. Some of that is technology as well. So we can actually cover more area, partly because people are living closer together, it's denser, so we don't need as many firefighters, as much staff. Town of Milton has not historically done a very good job keeping up with it, but I can tell you that at least last 6-7 years of the council, we have pretty much approved everything the fire department itself has asked for. Sometimes we get questions from people who support the fire department and they ask for certain things that the fire department itself is not asking for. It's like, dude, like just whatever the fire chief has asked for, they've gotten it. Sometimes they had to wait a year to get it. Last budget, we approved 6 firefighters. We approved deputy chiefs. We built new fire stations. So we're doing pretty well in our fire coverage right now. We went through a period we weren't doing that well, and we do have to keep an eye on it to make sure that we don't fall behind again. Oh, so this is not a municipal project, the 401 project, but the provincial government, the previous provincial government, so I can't remember which year it would have been, they approved the 401 expansion from Mavis to either Highway 25 or Tremaine. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember which one, but one of the two. Adding, more lanes, doubling essentially the highway. So you'll have HOV lanes as well as collector and express. The way they structured it is that the contractors, there's just a bunch of contractors combined together, they do not get paid until the project is complete. So the government isn't spending anything until the project is complete, and it adds an incentive for the contractor to finish things as soon as possible. And that's part of the reason why you'll see that the stretch between Ontario and Mavis and Mississauga took absolutely forever, whereas Mavis to Highway 25 Milton is going like amazingly fast. Again, I can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was like 2016, 2017. So whatever year it was, the project probably started a year later, add 5 years to it. But I can get the answer to that. I have the project details in my link somewhere. So it's a great question. Let's take the question out, and I'll take the second question. The other question was, it was actually not a question. It was in comments on Facebook today, and someone actually messaged me and asked me to talk about it on vaccinations. It seems like if you look at the vaccination numbers, it seems like Milton is behind Peel and other regions because the vaccination rate in Milton is much lower. It's not entirely true. See, I mean, it's true, but the reasons for it. Milton generally is a very young population. So Milton has a much smaller percentage of seniors than all the other municipalities around us. Take Burlington, for example. Burlington, the percentage of seniors in Burlington is twice as much as percentage of seniors in Milton. Because the vaccination started at older population and worked its way down, it meant that more people in Burlington qualified for vaccination sooner than people in Milton. Milton is such a younger population that a big chunk of our population, something like 25% of our population, didn't even qualify until this Monday. So obviously, as an overall percentage, our vaccination rate will be lower than other municipalities, but that's not because people in Milton don't believe in vaccination. There is some vaccination hesitation, but I would say it's probably equally spread. I don't think Milton is worse than other municipalities in that sense. CN question, someone already asked. Patios, that's the other one. When are patios opening up? The province of Ontario controls this. June 14th is the date. Most municipalities, and I would put myself in the same category, I would argue that because patios are outdoors, our cases are down, most of the spread is actually happening indoor, not outdoor. And most of the spread is happening in industrial setting, not in outdoor restaurants. I would say that patios should be open, but the province of Ontario's position as of today is June 14th. Now, there's some rumblings that it might change and they might open patios sooner, especially since all the other provinces have already allowed patios and dining on patios and stuff like that. So I hope that the province of Ontario kind of looks at it again, but even if they don't, it's only like 11 days away. And I honestly cannot wait. One of the things that has happened this pandemic, it has completely destroyed small businesses. So whenever patios do open up, if your budget permits, go eat out. Generally, I would say eat in. It's healthier, it's cheaper, but we would make an exception and say, absolutely, go pick a local restaurant, support your local business owners, and give them some business. Housing affordability, that's a tough one. We'll take that one after. Give me some easy ones first. Growth options, that's a tough one as well. Land acknowledgement, that's a topic actually comes up from time to time, and now with the sad news about the 215 bodies. The question came up on land acknowledgement again. Most governments, I would say pretty much, at this point, almost all municipalities have some kind of land acknowledgement that recognizes the land belonged to different nations before we got here. So before the settlers and the immigrants, there were other nations in this land with their own culture and their own history and their own religions and their own heritage. And it's just a way of acknowledging and recognizing their heritage. Town of Milton, unfortunately, unlike other municipalities, do not have land acknowledgement. You'll find nothing on our website. We don't start anything with anything. It's something that we've been looking into for a while. Councillor Ali and I have talked about it, and if we don't see a movement on it, then we might just bring a motion to force it. But there is stuff happening on it, so you'll see something happen. On that question, often comes up, some eye rolling and some question about why do we have to do it. I'm a big believer in it, mostly because heritage is important, history is important, and our history did not just start from the formation of Canada or from when the settlers first came in or immigrants came in after that. Our history started well before that. And all of that is the history of this land. So acknowledging that there were other nations in this land, the land we live in right now, were occupied by different nations before us, that's not a bad thing. It's actually, unfortunately, not talked about as much as it should. All right. Highway 403. All right, so let me just fill you in on that. 403 has become like super political, which is really weird. It's really bizarre to find a highway proposal become so political and so controversial. The region of Halton looked at the Highway 403 proposal, 413 actually. Sorry, why am I saying 403? Anyway, the new highway proposal that's going to go through Halton Hills to bypass the 401 to take traffic away. And it goes through some environmentally sensitive and greenbelt areas. So Halton of Region Council unanimously passed a notion opposing it without, and asked for an environmental assessment, federal environmental assessment, because the position was that we need someone else to look into it to make sure that it actually is done in an environmentally sensitive way. And so that's where we stopped. There was a motion in the Milton Council last week asking for the town of Milton to oppose it as well, and we deferred that motion. I'm of the opinion that it's premature to oppose a project just for the sake of opposing it, because we don't know enough about it. The reason we opposed the region of Halton is at that time, there was no federal environmental assessment that was going to happen for this project. So it was unknown whether building this highway in the areas where it was proposed was going to be destructive for the environment. Now that the environmental assessment is happening, my position is that we need to just shut up and wait for the process to finish so we can get full information and then make a decision of whether we like the project or not like the project. It's kind of in between. It seems silly to me personally. We've been getting a lot of emails. They're mostly form emails, which is kind of bizarre, but we've been getting a lot of emails asking us to oppose the highway, which once again, like I said, to me seems premature. Like oppose it on what ground? Because we don't want infrastructure. That seems silly. There is an argument, that's brought up that we should be building more highways. We should be spending money on transit instead, and highways will bring more traffic on its own. And that they all have some level of truth to it, but at this point, a lot of opposition is coming based on environmental concern, which is valid, which is why the region of Halton opposed it and asked for an environmental assessment. So let's pause the opposition, let's pause the support, let's just wait and see what the environmental assessment can't talk today. What the environmental assessment finds. I have this habit where I talk really fast. I used to be Toastmasters, and I would always get the feedback: enunciate your words, Zishan. I shall try to enunciate my words. Can we do something about the graphic abortion flyers? So yes and no. At the Milton level, so at the municipal level, we can't do anything about it right now because technically speaking, it's not illegal. However, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in here. Let me find that for you. There is a pending legislation at the province of Ontario, as a Ontario Parliament, and Ontario can ban this, and they're considering it. The best thing to do is to contact the MPP, wherever you're listening from, whoever the MPP is. If you're in Milton, then the MPP would be Parm Gill. Contact their office and encourage them to kind of move it along. That's the link. I don't think you can copy it, but I'll leave in the comment afterwards. That's a link to the bill. Contact your MPP and encourage them to ban the practice of leaving, graphic or offensive flyers at people's stores. They can do that, and once Ontario bans it, we'll be able to take an action on it and do something about it. Unfortunately, right now, because this activity is not technically illegal, we can't really do anything about it, which is pretty disturbing because I've heard stories of like kids as young as 4-year-olds finding it, and I would be absolutely, I was going to use a different word, but I would be pissed if my young child found it. So yeah, we unfortunately cannot do anything about it right now, but something can be done. Contact your MPP's office and ask them to kind of move that legislation along and get that done faster. Municipal, however, can we put pressure on the feds and Auckland regime? We absolutely can, especially in light of this news. You know what? Unfortunately, and I say it as a supporter or whatever, let's forget that. Let me speak in general terms. Canadian governments generally have done a lot of lip service to Aboriginal issues. Some political parties are better than others. They're not all the same. Some parties are really bad. Some have done much better job, but generally we haven't done as good a job as we should. They are, and most people are surprised to find out there are a lot of Indigenous communities in Canada that have been under boil water advisory because they don't have clean drinking water. And it's just so amazing that a country that has so much clean, fresh water and is so wealthy and so successful still has massive number of communities that don't have clean drinking water. It's absolutely bizarre. So yes, we should put the pressure on. It is something. It's something that, and again, I think my friends in the federal governments might disagree. My MPs and other friends I have, but it is something that we have the capacity to solve, as long as we have the will to do it, and as long as we have the willingness to go beyond lip service. It is hard work, but it can be done. It should be done. Under the, I mean, I'm kind of hiding behind the comment. Let me move the mic down a bit. Under the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, we actually cannot block truck traffic from these regional roads. So these are major arterial roads, and truck traffics are allowed to take these arterial roads, and we cannot arbitrarily block them. What we can do and what we are doing is expand other roads. You'll notice that Britannia Road is going through expansion. Louis Sonora is getting through expansion. Tremaine is getting expanded north out to all the way to 401. We can expand other roads to distribute the traffic really well. So that's something we're working on. Not taking CN into account. CN is a whole different issue. There are a lot of other concerns with CN, not just the traffic, not just the environment, not just the health concern. There are a lot of issues with that location where the project is proposed. So we'll keep that independent. But as far as the general truck traffic is concerned, we unfortunately cannot ban it from a major arterial road like a dairy road. All right. Some of the comments are more not really questions or like political arguments, which we are not going to get into. But you guys can argue in comments. Just to repeat, if you're not, wherever these comments are repeated, people are arguing back and forth about abortion, not abortion. I really don't care. That's not what the issue is. The legislation that's before the parliament deals with leaving graphic flyers on people's doors when you can control who gets them and who sees them, right? So it's not about banning position. It's not about banning any kind of activity, whether it's a political activity or non-political activity. It's about leaving graphic information that might be offensive, that might be harmful for children or others when they can't consent to it, right? So that's what it's about. It's not about like the whole abortion thing. Just forget about it. It has nothing to do with abortion. It has everything to do with leaving material on people's front door where someone in that house that might be underage can see it and they have no way of consenting or not consenting to it. That's the issue, and that's what we oppose. All right, let's move past that. I have a view where I can see all the comments kind of flowing up, but sometimes the comments come really fast. I have to scroll up. So if I missed your question, I'm not ignoring it. I just kind of went past it. Another question came up around housing affordability. What is Town of Milton doing around housing affordability? Housing affordability, unfortunately, is one of those things that gets talked about. It's really hard for a single municipality to solve. It's really something that provincially, there needs to be more provincial leadership. And that's an area where we actually have willingness by the federal government. The federal government is actually willing to match dollar to dollar. But it's not just the province of Ontario. It's generally speaking, provinces have kind of dumped it on municipalities, and it's really hard for municipalities to solve this problem. So it's really difficult for Milton or Halton alone to go do something about housing affordability because we don't really control the variables that go into it. And even if we were to build a whole lot of, let's say, subsidized housing to kind of increase housing affordability, if everyone else around us isn't doing it, it doesn't really solve the problem. So housing affordability is more of a provincial issue, but what we do try to do at Halton and in Milton is we try to make sure that there's housing availability of every type for every market range. So we can control how much homes cost, but what we can control and what we do try to do is that there are some single family homes, there's some townhomes, there's some detached townhouses, There's some low-rise townhome condos. There's some high-rise condos. So we try to mix it all up to make sure that there's a supply of every type of housing. So people with every type of background, with every housing requirement, can find something in Milton. Our goal is to make sure that people in every stage of life can find something in Milton, whether they're starting out and buying the first home, or all the way through to when they're retiring and the empty nesters and now they're downsizing. We can't control how much they cost, though, but we can control the supply, and that's what we try to do. Steve Adams, when is urban parking lot versus Milton? Oh, that's a great question. There's still more work to be done. So, I mean, if you don't know the history, Milton is actually looking at creating the largest urban park in North America. It's kind of a little hand-wavy stuff, but still, there's no construction per se because it's still going to be a passive conservation area. I can't speak, but the idea is to take land. If you imagine 16 Mile Creek cutting through Milton, imagine having trail around 16 Mile Creek that kind of connects all the conservation areas, environmentally sensitive areas that go through north of Main Street that kind of merge into all the different conservation areas we have. So you create this contiguous. I really cannot speak today. I don't know what's wrong with me. I didn't have coffee. That's the thing. You create this nicely connected area where no matter where you live in urban Milton, you can kind of, or rural Milton for that matter, you can take trails and connect everywhere. It's still, unfortunately, it's still a bit out. That's all I can say. I have to look into more detail. I think the other comment is. I think the other comment is not a question. It's still about the same flyer debate. So let's just stay away from the flyer debate. The other questions, there were a number of questions I got around this. So let me give you a bit of history and background first. What Halton of Regions, the province of Ontario has asked every municipality to meet certain growth targets because Canadian population will continue to grow. Canada still has like yearly immigration, regardless of which party's in power. That's still, I mean, our system is designed to kind of require pretty much increasing population. Otherwise, our economic system kind of collapse. Our social security, everything else kind of collapse. We really require a continuously growing economy and continuously growing population. A country like Canada grows their population through immigration. That's not stopping. A large number of almost half of immigrants settle in the Greater Toronto area. That's not going to change. So now you have a situation where you have the population of the Greater Toronto area that's continuing to rise. So what a few governments ago, different political party, then Liberals came to power, then Conservatives came to power. Like, so it's a bipartisan issue really. What they did is that they said, look, we can't keep sprawling. Right? So you draw a boundary around GTA. So he said, this is the boundary. Let's try to figure out how to grow efficiently within this boundary. So it's not this is where the reason I'm mentioning it is because often people might criticize the current political government, but the previous party had the same position. And the previous government, which was also a different party, had the same position and so on. The idea is that the government of Ontario then looked at municipalities and said, all right, so this is a population projection. What are you going to do to meet this population target? What is your growth plan? How are you going to handle it? How are you going to accommodate people? And they're asking us to do that by telling us that we can't grow the boundary out. So you have a GTA boundary, we can grow it out, but within the GTA boundary, we can move things around. So if you look at the land between Mississauga and Milton, we can go west of Milton. So we can go towards, we can go towards Guelph. We can't go north. We cannot grow into that area. Those boundaries are fixed. But we can grow towards Mississauga. We can grow towards Oakville and towards Burlington, all that empty land, because they're within the GTA boundary. Following me so far? As the region of Halton is looking at it, there is an ask by certain people, by certain groups, to not grow the boundary at all, by not even grow towards Mississauga. Milton's vision is to create Trafalgar Corridor as a high-density corridor, because we know that there is a lot of demand, even in Milton, for high-density, high-rise office spaces and high-density, high-rise condos. We also know that people don't like having these in established neighborhoods because they want to maintain the character of established neighborhoods. So on one hand, we have a lot of demand for it, both from builders as well as from people purchasing them. On the other hand, existing people don't like it. So what's the solution? Our solution is, well, take this empty piece of land that's very close to Mississauga, where the demand is highest, where we can actually put a GO station in and say, hey, province of Ontario, we can do this here as long as the GO station runs in Trafalgar that can fund this area. And then we can make this a high density corridor. It connects to 403 at QEW. It connects to, it goes through 407. It goes through 401. Plus there's a GO station, plus it goes to Mississauga, plus away from all the existing population in Milton, so nobody else complains about it. It's a perfect plan, except now there's an ask that, hey, let's not increase the boundary at all. And that's a growth plan that's been pushed quite heavily. And it's actually quite problematic, especially when it comes to Milton's perspective. It's problematic because if you think about how will Milton double its population, really, right? So we're around 130,000 people. How will we accommodate another 130,000 people in the same boundary without growing the boundary? That means if we were to do that, we can, in theory, accommodate residential population. So we can just grow tall, right? You'll see lots of condos everywhere. We can accommodate residential population, but we cannot accommodate job growth. In fact, the Region of Halton staff, when they looked into it, their projection is that Town of Milton or Region of Halton, I can't remember which level, but either way, we stand to lose 40,000 jobs because these jobs exist, the industries exist, the demands exist. And if Milton says, hey, sorry, we have no land, they don't just, you don't get this industrial logistics company or a warehouse, something else on top story of a condo. They just move out to Kitchener-Waterloo. They move out to Guelph. They move out to Wellington. They just go somewhere else. So jobs still exist. Industries still exist. They just move further out. So from an environmental perspective, people who are saying, hey, we can't grow because it's better for the environment, it actually becomes worse for the environment because now it means more commuting, more greenhouse gas emissions, more time sitting on traffic. So it's really a complex issue. And I've always struggled whenever we deal with, and I say it respectfully, I mean no insult, whenever we deal with single issue organizations or single issue people, because then you don't have to balance out different issues. You don't have to make trade-offs. You just say, this is my issue and this is what I want, and that's it. And if you're not doing this exact same thing, then you're incompetent because they don't have to worry about all the other downstream effects. And so we're looking into growth options. And if you're listening to this, just send me a message. I'll send you some growth options. I would like more and more people to get involved because unfortunately, whenever this happens, we only hear from people from same kind of concern. So we might hear only from environmental groups or sustainable groups. And there's nothing wrong with that perspective, but we don't hear the other perspective of, an auto body shop owner that says, hey, I've been looking to expand my business for the last 5 years and I can't find space because there's nothing in Milton. We don't hear from, a religious group that says, we've been looking for a place of worship, but there's nothing in Milton and you won't let me build outside of the boundary because you're telling me that the boundary is not expanding right now. We don't hear from all the other businesses that are moving away from Milton. So we need to actually hear more diverse voices. And that's an interesting thing. That's a hard lesson that I had when I first got elected. And again, I don't know how to say this. I'm just going to say it, and I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. There are about 100 individuals that we hear from. No matter what the issue, we'll hear from 10 or 15 people from the same group of 100. In a population of 130,000 in Milton, we only ever hear from the same 100 people. And that's problematic. It means that we're not doing a very good job listening to a wide set of population, listening to everyone else. And we might be making decisions that are biased or that are one-sided because we're biased by a few people who we hear a lot from, and we're ignoring everyone else. That's a big rant that I went to. Let's see. What plans are in place? We have to celebrate planned growth. I think it's just running neighborhoods. We don't have to. That's it. You know what? Facebook user. I don't know who you are. It just says Facebook user. It's a Facebook user. Message me, and I can tell you if the growth plan that's being pushed by certain councillors goes through, and this is not a scare tactic because this is literally the argument that they're presenting, that condos are good. Everyone needs to go into transit. Cars are bad. Therefore, we need to fix a boundary and only grow through intensification. Milton's current plan is 50% densification, 50% greenfield. So we're still going to see condos. We're still going to see intensification. But Milton is saying, look, we can only accommodate half the growth with intensification. The other half the growth will have to expand out. But then we're asked to look into the option that says 100% of growth has to be intensification. That's the only way. And that's something that's where we are looking at it proactively and saying, hey, condo developers, Trafalgar is your corridor. Go and build them in Trafalgar and go wild. We're actually looking at 19,000 jobs in a very tiny stretch in Trafalgar because they're very modern, mixed use, high density, hotel and office and residential in the same tower type jobs right next to the proposed GO station. And that's a much better way of handling high density than sprinkling it all over the municipality and destroying the existing neighborhoods. And I find it really bizarre that sometimes same politicians and same councillors and same members of public who on one hand say no growth, no expansion of boundary, we need to grow in existing areas, but on the other hand say also preserve the character of existing neighborhoods. So I'm like, which one is it? Do we expand the boundary, or do we only intensify, or do we preserve the character of existing neighborhoods? Because we can't have it all at the same time. And that's the problem. When you only look at one issue at a time and you don't try to balance it out, you don't think about the downstream impact, and you can take very contradictory positions that cannot both be true at the same time. And you take those positions because you say one thing one week and second thing a different time. Right, let's see. This growth plan includes small to medium commercial areas. That's the problem. Milton is out of land for small and to medium commercial units. We have no land left. Okay, Dairy Green Business Park has land for industrial growth. Based on our current rate of growth, we'll be out of that land in 3 to 5 years. So let's take the worst case scenario of 5 years. 5 years from now, Milton will have exactly 0 industrial land, small or large. 0. If we don't expand a boundary, there is going to be no industrial growth. There can be office growth because offices can go into mixed use environment, but industries, manufacturing, logistics, warehouses, mechanic shops, they kind of cannot coexist with in a mixed use area. They have to go away from residential areas for noise, environmental, a whole lot of reasons, and they are basically done. There is going to be no more economic growth in Milton. I can't stress this more. It's not just me making things up. This is what studies show. This is what our staff's telling us. This is what independent consultants are telling us. Because when there is no land available for industrial growth, if you have, you're expanding your business and Milton has no land left, you're not going to go out of your way to try to figure something out. You're just going to go and get some land in Kitchener-Waterloo. You're just going to get land in Cambridge. You're going to move out of Milton. That's what happens, because Milton is not a planet by itself. Milton is part of a system. It's part of Greater Toronto area. And if Milton says no, thank you, the next municipality next door gets the business. They get the tax revenue. They get everything else. All we get is we stay a bedroom community and people keep commuting. So right now, whoever you are, Facebook user, we are out of small and medium commercial land. Okay, we're out. We have retail, but if you have, if you want to open up auto body shop, if you want to have like a little, hardware business, if you want to have like a small business, we're out of land. We need to expand to accommodate these things because we just have nothing left. And these kind of businesses generally cannot coexist with residential and mixed use. Milton's actually done and this is something I will defend. I will fight anyone who disagrees with me. When I first got elected, we had, and not just me, when the new crop of council back in 2010 first got elected, there was a massive shortage. We were so far behind infrastructure. We have really done well and caught up. Like it doesn't seem like it, but if you were in Milton in 2010, there was a time when I first moved to Milton, Thompson was a 1-lane road. Derry Road was a 1-lane road. Imagine Derry being a 1-lane, like 2 lanes, 1 lane each way. Thompson was 1 lane. Louis Sonora didn't exist in most places. Tremaine was, again, 1 lane each way. We have really caught up, and we're doing a reasonably good, not perfect job, but a reasonably good job building infrastructure as people come in. Now, the area around the main GO station is a big concern of mine. And my position is not the same as position of everyone else, but my position has always been that we cannot simply rely on a single GO station. There's been a lot of asks that, we should lobby the province to build a parking structure at the main GO station and Main and Thompson. And my position has always been that that's actually going to hurt us because What it does is that it takes everyone from Milton and forces them to come into the same spot at the same time. And Thompson or Maine cannot handle that traffic, right? So you might have parking lot for 20,000 cars, or I'm exaggerating, for 6,000 cars. But how do you bring 6,000 cars at that same intersection in a 1 hour period? What we need to do is we need to have multiple GO stations, and that's why we're working at a GO station on Trafalgar, which we've had a lot of success in, unless the region of Halton comes out and says you can't grow the boundary, in which case we're back to square one. And the idea is that people who live in the east side of Milton can then use Trafalgar as the GO station and spread out the traffic and move the high density demand over the Trafalgar corridor away from existing areas. Does that make, I can't answer. I'm asking if that makes sense. Like, you can answer me. Sorry. I'm just used to talking like that. Make strides with furniture. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Again, I don't know the Facebook user. I don't know why it's doing this. It does it because if you leave a comment on Milton Talk on a Facebook group, because this tool is not part of the group, it can't see it. If you leave it on my page or YouTube, they can tell me who it is. In regards to roads, where the lack of right. Oh my God, that upsets me so much. Like I can't tell you why. Actually, there is no good answer. It's really hard to criticize a municipality that you're part of. It's like, being a board of director of a corporation and criticizing the same corporation. So I'm not going to criticize Milton. I'm just going to say, yes, it needs to happen. Traffic light timing is being worked on. So Region of Halton is actually looking at a project where we're going to coordinate traffic light all across the region, not just Milton, but all across the region. The problem with traffic light was it's a really dumb system, right? Where Maine is a local road, Derry is a regional road, Louis Sonora is a local road, Britannia is a regional road. Trafalgar is a regional road. Then we get local roads, then we get regional roads, then we get local roads, then we get regional roads. Region controls the timing on regional roads, town controls timing on local roads, and it's really hard to coordinate. So Region of Halton is looking at coordinating traffic lights across the entire region. Town of Milton is partnering up with them and participating in, as are other municipalities. So that's going to improve traffic timing. Traffic timing is something that's getting work. It does need serious work. The work is getting done. The problem is finally being solved. Right turn lanes, if I had to hear it, I would pull it out. It's like really, really, really frustrating when you're going south on Thompson, you want to turn right on Derry, and you see that Derry's empty. You could have turned, but there's one car in front of you, and there's no right turn lane. It annoys the heck out of me. So, and that's the thing, right? It's actually, believe it or not, this is a more sustainable way to go, and this is better for the environment, as opposed to saying, hey, we're not going to grow our boundary, because keep in mind that no one's growing the boundary of the Greater Toronto Area. We're not going west. So the entire rural part of Milton, where the farming happens, that's all protected by 3 different levels of protection. Milton, Halton Region, Conservation Halton, Niagara Escarpment, Province of Ontario, actually 5 different levels of government. So that's not changing. We're only talking about the gap between Mississauga and Milton. The question is, do we leave that empty, or do we fill that gap, or do we leave that empty and move people within the existing boundary of Milton? Again, only people, because jobs cannot be accommodated in existing boundary of Milton. Like I said, 40,000 jobs are going to move out of this area, and there's no way around it. Do you foresee property tax increasing? I don't know what I said, but my Siri kind of came up. So, okay, do you foresee property taxes increasing? Yes, actually, I do. And quite significantly, unless generally economic growth lags residential growth. So, there's businesses pay a higher rate of taxes than residences. All right. As Milton's residential growth went up and economic growth did not keep up because it lags, we start to rely more and more on residential taxes. So something like, and again, I was a budget chair last year when this question came up, so I should know the number, but I cannot recall it right now. But something like 60-ish% of our taxes are residential. And that's a pretty big dependence on residential. The way to lower the rate of property tax increase is to bring more jobs and more economic growth in, because businesses pay a higher rate of taxes, which means homes will then have to pay less taxes, right? If we go, if we freeze the growth and move the economic development out of Milton, then we'll have to rely even more on property taxes. The other part of this question, I see the comment coming up, is do you see taxes increasing with COVID spending? So regionally, we're actually okay, at least in Halton and Milton. We've done a good job. Other levels of government have come through, not to the extent they should, but they have. We've generally done a pretty good job. I am worried about what's going to happen at the federal and provincial level, because these levels of government have spent a lot of money and taken on a lot of debt, especially the federal government. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just stating it as a fact. Like, it is something that has happened. So I am concerned about what's going to happen there, but I'm not going to talk about federal and provincial. But COVID spending alone is not going to have a big impact at the local level. What's going to have an impact is an ongoing thing. So there is an impact on public health, on what happens after we're out of this, right? Because it's going to be ongoing vaccination, and some of the policies might change in what we do with long-term care homes, and how we handle public health. So some of those things might change, and as long as those changes come with funding, we're okay. But if the province decides that we need to implement some changes that cost money but not fund them, then there might be an impact. So it's too early to know at the provincial level. Yeah, actually. So I think this is related to my plan about our Egerton, which is a business plan, and Trafalgar secondary plans, right? Trafalgar is actually slated to be an 8-lane road with rapid transit, with GO station, top and bottom, so Oakville and Milton, with rapid transit connecting them. So there is that is in consideration. There are a lot of plans to handle that. And that's the thing. Once we plan, see, if we are given the opportunity to plan growth and direct growth where the infrastructure is getting built, that growth doesn't have a negative impact. The growth pays for itself and doesn't have a negative impact. When we do not have the opportunity to do that, when the province, and again, both parties, I'm not just going to criticize PCs, because Liberals is the same thing. When both parties set up LPAT or like weird levels of tribunals that can kind of override municipal decisions and pass decisions in favor of developers, and allow developers to do things that are not good for the municipality, and circumvent local planning, then we end up in a situation where bad things happen and we can't control it, where condos go up, where infrastructure is not there to handle it, where growth goes up, where schools and traffic and roads and other infrastructure isn't there, and we have to then play catch up and try to figure things out after the fact. And that's what we're trying to avoid by planning up front, by being proactive, by saying, look, there is a demand for high density, so let's plan where this high density is going to go and how people are going to move around and all that stuff. Does that, again, I have this habit of asking if that answers the question, but you can tell me if that answers the question. So we have 15 minutes. I'm going to stop it at 9 sharp. I promise my wife is going to hang out with her. So, for marital happiness, I'm going to end it at 9 sharp. So if you have questions, now is the time to ask those questions. Otherwise, I might take a couple of questions. Actually, I've pretty much answered most of the questions I had received. And if there are no questions, then maybe we'll end early. When I did this regularly, I used to do this for 30 minutes. I started doing it I haven't done it for a while, so I set up for an hour. 30 minutes was a good time, but I find that it was kind of rushed. An hour gives me a little more room to kind of ramble on a bit, but you guys have to ask questions, because if no questions, then I can talk about what's coming up. A lot of things are coming up municipally. The growth plan is actually it's weird because it's highly technical. It's a lot of layers involved. So if you're interested, do send me a message and I'll send you some reading material and we'll just talk about it. It's I do want more and more people to get involved in it. Oh, thank you. Sorry, just someone saying it was a useful session. I was saying thank you to that. I got asked to put that link again. So if you can see it, this is a legislation that was talking about banning the distribution of graphic flyers. Again, right? So if you look at the legislation, it's not banning distribution of flyers. It's not banning distribution of political material. It's just banning distribution of like overly graphic stuff that might be offensive. So that's the part. It's the graphic part that's the problem. Ask questions. 2 more comments come up. Yeah, you know what? Every week didn't work. Twice a month also didn't work. But I think I should make it once a month. It's really my bad that I don't do it. I'm gonna be honest with you. When the COVID first started, I started doing it just before COVID, and COVID thing helped, and I kept it up. But as COVID, the whole lockdown went up, it just got really hard. Like it was just, I don't know about you guys, man, but I'm so done. I know that it's important. We need to follow. The lockdowns have been really important. They've been really helpful, and I do support them. But I do acknowledge that they've taken a toll. I'm so done with them. I can't wait to go back to normal. I cannot wait to, and that's why I keep harping about vaccinations, right? Because that's the only way out of it. I know there's vaccination hesitancy, and if you have doubts about vaccines, I would encourage you to talk to your doctor as opposed to doing your own research, because honestly, when people say they do their own research, they don't really mean what it means to do research, respectfully. So just talk to your doctor. It might not be right for you. It might be, but your doctor is probably the much better person to tell you than anyone else. But otherwise, thanks for joining. We'll do it again next month. Maybe I'll make it a first Thursday a month thing. And if somebody joins afterwards, then tough luck, you missed out. All right, guys, stay safe. Talk to you later next month.